Hello to those of you on YouTube. Our theme today is love versus fear, and I'll be using Annika Rose's blog throughout today's message. In a world that often feels like it's designed to keep us in a state of anxiety, choosing to act from love rather than fear is perhaps the most radical form of self-care that we can do. But what does this actually look like in practice? How can we shift our perspective in everyday moments to operate from a place of openness and compassion rather than contraction and defense? As Dr. Brené Brown wisely notes, we cannot selectively numb emotions. When we numb the painful emotions, we also numb the positive emotions. This insight captures the heart of why operating from love rather than fear matters so profoundly. When we try to protect ourselves against potential pain, we also inadvertently block our capacity for joy and connection. So let's delve into that. Here's something that was recently witnessed. There was a heart-stopping moment as an elderly gentleman slid at speed in his wheelchair from the very top to the bottom of a very steep ramp. 3 young men were at the bottom of the ramp walking away, and they quickly turned around and caught him, breaking his fall and preventing what could have been a very nasty accident for this octogenarian. They made sure he was okay, no doubt shaken up, and they collected his strewn belongings for him. This small moment perfectly illustrates what acting from love rather than fear looks like in real time. These young men didn't hesitate or worry about themselves. They didn't calculate whether getting involved was worth the risk. They simply responded with immediate compassion and care to help another human being in need. In an instant, they demonstrated what's possible when we operate from a place of connection rather than self-protection. The sharing of this story has demonstrated how individual acts ripple outward across the community and beyond to transform our collective experience. So here's a topic you might not associate with love versus fear. When you stand before the mirror each morning, what voice do you hear? Fear says, you need to fix these flaws before anyone notices them. Love says, good morning, body. Thank you for carrying me through another day. Do you hear the difference? The way we speak to ourselves in these private moments create the foundation of how we move through the world. Fear-based self-talk focuses on inadequacy and comparison, setting impossible standards that keep us perpetually dissatisfied. Love-based self-talk acknowledges our humanity, celebrates our strengths while accepting our imperfections as part of our authentic, worthy self. If this is something that you struggle with, consider sticking a note on your mirror with a phrase that anchors your self-compassion. Something simple like, I'm enough exactly as I am today. It sounds a little corny, but it works, I promise. I have a note on my dresser that says, I'm doing the best I can, and that is enough. Yes, it's a good, fantastic daily reminder. Especially as it relates to social media and the comparison factor. Our relationship with platforms like Instagram reveal how we're operating. Fear scrolls endlessly, consuming perfectly curated lives, leaving us feeling left behind and lacking. Love uses social media as a tool, seeking inspiration while keeping healthy boundaries. When posting, fear asks, will this get enough likes? Do I look good enough? What will people think? Love asks, is this authentic? Does sharing this serve me or others in some way? The difference might be subtle, but it's actually quite massive. One approach drains your energy, while the other preserves your sense of self, regardless of external validation. If you want to try to change things up before opening any social media app, set a clear intention. Maybe it's to connect with specific people or research some information or share something meaningful. When you catch yourself mindlessly scrolling and feeling that familiar tug of comparison, gently close the app. Your mental health will thank you. So let's move on from how operating from fear or love impacts our interactions with others. Fear shows up as defensiveness when criticized, keeping conversations surface level, avoiding difficult conversations, people-pleasing at our own expense, jealousy and possessiveness. Love manifests as listening with genuine curiosity, setting healthy boundaries, expressing needs clearly and directly, because we all have needs, allowing others to have a different perspective, offering forgiveness, not only to others, but to ourselves as well. When we operate from fear, we're constantly protecting ourselves from potential hurt. When we operate from love, we recognize that authentic connection requires risk. It requires risk. And we discern that risk is totally worth it because we need genuine connection to survive and thrive in recovery and in life. We need it. That's how we're wired. So if you want to try a new approach in your next difficult conversation, pause before responding defensively. Take a deep breath. Sometimes the time of a breath is all it needs. And say, what would love say here? Often it's simply, tell me more about that, or I hadn't thought about it that way. This tiny pause can completely change the outcome of a tricky chat for real. So let's think about free time. Does anybody have free time? How we spend our discretionary time speaks volumes about our relationship with others and with ourselves. Fear fills every moment with productivity and numbing distractions. Love creates space for activities that genuinely nourish us. Genuinely nourish us. Love recognizes that rest is a fundamental need, not a reward for getting things done. Okay? Fear says we must earn rest through achievement. That's not true. That's a lie. When operating from fear, we often avoid silence and solitude, filling our calendars to avoid facing uncomfortable emotions. From love, we balance connection with others and a deep need for connection with ourselves. If you recognize this pattern in yourself, here's a strategy that might help. Schedule at least 1 hour this week, or if that's too much, a half an hour, for something that nourishes you without any productive outcome. Maybe it's reading a fiction book or taking a leisurely walk without tracking your steps. Maybe just sitting somewhere without your phone and just sitting quietly. I would say sitting in nature, but you probably don't want to do that anytime soon. So that sounds like self-care to me. So let's stay on that a moment. Surely we can't incorporate fear into self-care, can we? Oh, yes, we can, and we do. Fear-based self-care looks like rigidly following wellness trends because we should. Exercising to punish our bodies for what we ate. Meditating to fix ourselves. Journaling only when we feel good. Love-based self-care looks like moving our bodies in a way that feels good for us. Resting without guilt when tired. Creating flexible routines that serve our well-being. Allowing all emotions to be felt and processed. Here's a truth to chew on. The distinction totally lies in the intention. Are we performing self-care to become better versions of ourselves? Or are we meeting ourselves with compassion in the moment. Are you ready to embrace and accept yourself exactly where you are? The next time you engage in self-care activity, check in with your motivation. If you sense that you're coming from a place of self-criticism or fear, simply notice that without judgment and gently shift your intention to one of self-kindness and acceptance. Perhaps the most powerful way to shift from operating in fear to operating in love is through practicing presence. Fear lives in projected futures and ruminated pasts, whereas love exists in the now. Mindfulness. When we're fully present, we're more likely to respond rather than react. We can see situations more clearly without the distortion of catastrophic thinking or past wounds. Presence allows us to access our inner wisdom, the quiet voice that knows what actions align with our deepest values. So if you want to operate a little differently from now on, practice this. Several times throughout your day, pause for just 30 seconds. 30 seconds. Feel your feet on the ground, notice your breath, observe your surroundings using all of your senses. This simple practice trains your nervous system to return to the present moment, where love is always more accessible than fear. When we choose love over fear, in our individual actions, we become agents of change in our broader communities. The power of this ripple effect cannot be overstated. After sharing the story of those young men at the shopping center, the community response on a local Facebook page was immediate and profound. Comments flooded in, celebrating these young heroes, sharing other positive encounters, and expressing gratitude for the reminder that young people are kind and compassionate and ready to help. Several patients mentioned showing the post to their teenagers to counterbalance the negative stereotypes they've been hearing. Almost 2,000 people liked this post. This illustrates an important truth. Our narratives shape our reality. On a community page where recently fear-based stories about male youths had dominated so many discussions, one love-based observation shifted the entire conversation from division to appreciation. What might have gone unnoticed became a catalyst for collective perspective shifting. By choosing to act from love, those young men weren't just helping an elderly gentleman, they were modeling behavior that inspires others. Similarly, by choosing to share stories that highlight compassion rather than chaos, we become role models for a different way of engaging with our communities. As social beings, we're constantly absorbing cues from others about how to behave and what to value. Research in social psychology demonstrates that witnessing acts of kindness increases the likelihood that we'll perform kind acts ourselves, a phenomenon known as moral elevation. When we see others operating from love, it awakens our own capacity for compassion. It's a win-win. All of these examples of acting from love rather than fear are not going to happen overnight. Like anything that is worth doing, this takes time and practice. Really, it's like training. Like you would train and practice a musical instrument. You wouldn't go purchase a clarinet in the music store and go right to the Philharmonic Orchestra. That's not going to happen. You need to practice day by day to build up your skills. Same idea. So be gentle with yourself. Because, friends, we have a lot of tools in our toolbox to use, but a bat isn't one of them. Because if it were beneficial to beat ourselves up, it would have worked by now, yes? So put the bat down and consider a kinder approach. You may be pleasantly surprised at the outcome of self-compassion. Now, it is said that the opposite of addiction is connection, And that is what love does. It connects. Spirituality is connection to self, others, and something bigger than ourselves. Whatever that might look like for you. I'll call it a higher power. It could be a divine being, an energy source, nature, your best or future self, a deceased loved one, a group conscience, or something else. Our higher power is a source of love, caring, and benevolence. Our higher power wants the very best for us and the world. If we want to live from a place of love rather than fear, it is a good idea to work on accepting all the love that our higher power has to give. And let's soak it in like a sponge so that we're empowered to operate from a place of love and radiate that love outward in our daily lives. Spend time with a higher power in prayer and meditation. Write a letter to your higher power each day. Practice connecting, seeking guidance, and spending time with your higher power, just like you would cultivate a human relationship. In this way, trust and intimate knowing can occur. Since our higher power is the source of all love, we have an amazing resource at our fingertips 24/7. We have that power to tap into our higher power whenever we choose. Whenever we choose. And while it takes intentionality to operate from love instead of fear, it is wholly possible with the help of our higher power. So be of good courage. The invitation here is twofold. To recognize opportunities to act from love in our daily lives, knowing that these actions ripple outward in ways we may never fully witness, and to intentionally amplify stories and examples that demonstrate our collective capacity for care, rather than feeding narratives of danger and division. Together, these practices create individuals and communities where love, rather than fear, becomes the default operating system. And honestly, who couldn't use more of that? So let's take a few moments of silent reflection. I invite you to think about what this might look like in your life right now. Think about a recent interaction that maybe didn't go so well. And replay that in your mind's eye, but instead of what actually happened, imagine yourself acting out of love in that situation. Just try it on for size for these next few moments in your imagination. Amen.